Meet Jake. Jake buys a coffee every single morning. $6. Flat white, oat milk, 1 pump of vanilla. He knows the barista's name. She knows his order. He walks in, taps his phone, walks out. The whole thing takes about 4 minutes, and it makes his morning. Now meet Ryan. Ryan makes coffee at home, about 40 cents a cup. A bag of good coffee, a decent brewer, and roughly 3 minutes of his time. No line, no small talk, just coffee. Jake's friends call Ryan cheap. Ryan's friends call Jake impractical. And somewhere in every personal finance corner of the internet, someone is running a calculation that is about to ruin Jake's morning. Here is the thing about that calculation. It is real, and it's also missing something important. Today, we're going to run every number: the daily cost, the annual cost, the compounded opportunity cost over 30 years, and the steel man case for why none of it might not matter as much as you think. We'll come back to Jake in year 10, because that's when the number starts to feel impossible to ignore. But first, let's establish what we're actually talking about. Section 1. The surface math. Jake spends $6 every morning. That does not sound like much. It is just coffee. $6. But let's run the numbers. $6 a day, 7 days a week. That is $42 every week. Multiply that by 52 weeks, and Jake spends $2,184 every year on coffee. Ryan spends about 40 cents a day. That works out to roughly $14 a week, or $728 a year. The gap between them is $1,456 every year. Jake does not feel that gap on any individual morning. That is the point. The gap is invisible on a Tuesday. It is only visible when you zoom out. Over 5 years, Jake spends $10,920 on coffee. Ryan spends $3,640. The difference is $7,280. That is a used car. That is a vacation. That is an emergency fund. And we are still only talking about 5 years. We are not here to talk about 5 years. We are here to talk about 30. Section 2. The compounding problem. Here is where the math stops being about coffee and starts being about money. That $1,456 annual gap, the difference between Jake and Ryan, is not just money Jake spends. It is money Jake does not invest. And money that is not invested does not sit still. It disappears. What happens if Ryan takes that $1,456 every year and puts it into a low-cost S&P 500 index fund? The S&P 500 has returned an average of approximately 10% per year over the last 50 years. At that rate, $1,456 invested every year compounds into something that is genuinely difficult to look at without feeling something. We said we would come back to Jake in year 10. Here it is. After 10 years, Ryan's coffee savings, invested at 10% annually, have grown to approximately $23,000. And Jake has had roughly 3,665 cups of coffee. After 20 years, Ryan's invested coffee savings have grown to approximately $83,000. And after 30 years, the full run, Ryan's coffee savings compound to approximately $240,000. $240,000 from not buying a $6 coffee every morning. Let that number sit for a second, because it is real. It is not a trick.
It is simply what happens when $1,456 per year compounds at 10% for 30 consecutive years. Over the same 30 years, Jake spends $65,520 on coffee, and financially, he has nothing to show for it. The number is the number. We are not going to soften it, but we are going to do something that almost nobody does in this conversation. We are going to steelman Jake.
Section 3. The case for Jake. The latte factor argument, the idea that small daily spending is the primary enemy of financial health, has a problem. It is not wrong, it is just dangerously incomplete. Here is what the latte factor conversation almost always ignores. Jake's rent is $2,000 per month. His car payment is $450 per month. His phone plan is $80 per month. His streaming subscriptions total $41 per month. Those 4 line items alone cost Jake $31,344 every year. His coffee costs $2,184 per year. The coffee is only 7% of those major expenses. It is not the main problem. The research on this is remarkably consistent. The factors that most strongly predict long-term financial outcomes are income growth, housing costs as a percentage of income, and investing consistency, not small discretionary purchases. Cutting Jake's coffee saves him $1,456 per year. Negotiating a 10% raise on a $60,000 salary creates $6,000 per year. Moving to an apartment that costs $200 less each month creates $2,400 per year. The coffee is real money, but it is not the lever. And there is something else the latte factor argument almost never accounts for. Jake's coffee is not just coffee. It is a ritual. It is 4 minutes of transition between his apartment and his day. It is a small, reliable pleasure in a life full of uncertainty. The psychological value of that ritual is not zero, and it is not easily replaced by a thermos. We are not saying that makes it worth $240,000. We are saying that pretending it has zero value is not honest math. It is moralizing dressed up as arithmetic.
Section 4. The real verdict. Here is the honest verdict. The $240,000 number is real. Ryan's discipline is real. The compounding is real. If you can cut the coffee, invest the difference consistently for 30 years, and not miss the ritual, do it. The math is completely on Ryan's side. But the coffee is not automatically the problem. The problem is spending $6 a day on coffee while also carrying a $4,000 credit card balance at 22% interest. That balance alone costs Jake approximately $880 per year in interest. Cut the coffee, pay the card. Now you have actually solved something. The problem is spending $6 a day on coffee while not contributing enough to capture your full 401k employer match. A 50% match on 6% of a $60,000 salary is $1,800 in free money per year. The coffee costs $2,184. One almost cancels the other and leaves you with nothing. The problem is not the coffee. The problem is the coffee without awareness of what else is happening in the same budget. Jake is not a fool. He is just missing the full picture. And that is exactly the kind of thing we are here to fix. So here is what we tell both of them. Ryan, keep investing the difference. You already understand the math. Stay consistent. 30 years from now, the math will have done its work. Jake, you do not have to quit the coffee. But you do have to know the number. $240,000 is the number. What you do with that information is entirely up to you.
but you do not get to not know it.
Section 5. The real number. Here is what this channel is actually about. It is not about telling you to skip the coffee. It is not about moralizing over $6. And it is not about making you feel guilty for spending money on things you enjoy. It is about making sure you are making the decision with the real number in front of you. Not the marketing version, not the guilt version, not the simplified version. The real version. $2,184 per year. $23,000 after 10 years. $83,000 after 20 years. $240,000 after 30 years. That is what a $6 daily coffee habit costs when you run the math all the way through. Now you know the number. What you do next is your call. Subscribe to Real Number Theory. Every week, we take a financial decision most people think they understand, and we run the numbers all the way through. Not the headline, not the sales pitch, not the popular opinion. The real number. I'll see you in the next one.